Alright guys, welcome back. Continuing with Chapter 2. Chapter 2, Postmistress Jenny. For a moment, Jack Bailey did not know what to do. He looked at his father, who was evidently quite ill and suffering much pain. Then the lad glanced at the bags of mail and the small express matter which lay over the saddle in front of Mr. Bailey. "Take the mail, Jack, my boy," the Pony Express rider exclaimed with an effort. "Take the mail and the stage so the stage can get off. I'm late now, but I couldn't make the trail any faster. Get the mail through, and then stop and bring a doctor back with you if he'll come." "But I can't go away from you and leave you like this, Dad." "You must, Jack, but you're too ill." "That can't be helped. The mail and express must go through on time if I'm to keep the contract, and I certainly don't want to lose it. I'll manage to get to the cottage. Once there, I can sit down, and if I get a cup of hot tea, I may feel better. It seems to be acute indigestion, though I don't remember eating anything that didn't agree with me. But ride on, Jack, and don't worry. I'll get to the cottage all right and be there when you come back." "All right, Dad, I'll do it. But I sure do hate to leave you like this." "It's better than having the mail delayed. Ride on. Explain to Jed Monty how it is. I think Jed takes the stage out tonight." "Yes, he does. I'll tell him." Jack quickly transferred to his own saddle the bags of mail and the express matter. Mr. Bailey seemed easier now, though there was still that look of pain on his face. "Come on, Sunger," called the lad to his pony. "We've got to make this on time." The intelligent and beautiful animal whinnied as if he understood. Then, with a fond and anxious look at his father, Jack wheeled about and set off down the trail at a gallop, Mr. Bailey going on more slowly, for every motion of his horse gave him pain. Jack was soon out of sight around a bend of the trail. He flashed past his cottage, and thought with satisfaction that there was hot water on the range so his father could make himself a cup of tea. Jack paused long enough at Mrs. Watson's cabin to tell what was the matter, and to inform her that he was taking the mail over the last mile of the route into town. "Your father ill?" exclaimed Mrs. Watson. "Oh, your father ill?" with an exclamation point, exclaimed Mrs. Watson. "I'll go right over there, Jack, and look after him." "I wish you would. It will be awful good of you." "Of course I'll go. Mary can look after things here," and she hurried to the house to get ready for her second trip that day to the Bailey cottage. Jack galloped on, trusting to the sure-footedness of his pony to avoid the dangers of the rough mountain trail, and Sunger justified the confidence reposed in him. Hello, we've been wondering what kept you." "Why, it's Jack," exclaimed Jed Monty, the grizzled stagecoach driver, as the lad galloped up to the Mansion Hotel, whence the start for the East was made. "Sorry to be late, but Dad's been taken sick," cried Jack as he flung the bag to the driver. "Sick, huh? That's too bad. Well, I guess I can make up the lost time. Haven't much of a load on tonight." The stage was all ready to start, and a few passengers having been impatiently waiting. "Pile in," cried Jed. With the crack of his long whip he sent the 4 horses off at a gallop. Jack did not linger, but wheeling his pony, set off for the doctor's office, hoping he would find the physician in. He was fortunate in this respect, and Dr. Brown promised to come at once. Jack did not wait for him, however, but hastened back to the cottage. There he found that Mrs. Watson had made his father some hot tea, which had relieved him somewhat. The look of pain was not so apparent now. "The doctor will be there right away," Jack reported. "Now tell me how it happened, Dad. We were quite worried about you. Indeed we were, when you didn't come in on as time would and as nearly as you do," said Mrs. Watson. I can't tell just how exactly it happened," said the Pony Express rider, "but I was taken with sharp and sudden pains after leaving Golden Crossing. I'd have turned back then and gotten someone else to ride the route for me, but I knew there were important letters in the mail, and it had to come through, so I kept on hoping I would get better. But I grew worse, and I had to slow up. I thought I'd never get here, but I did," and he shut his lips grimly. Pony Express riders have to be made of stern stuff, and they have to keep on their routes in rain or shine, calm or storm, and often when it is torture to sit in the saddle of a galloping horse. "You better get your supper, Jack," advised Mrs. Watson. "No, I don't feel like eating," the lad objected. "Yes, you'd better, son," said his father. "There's no telling what you may have to do tonight. and it's possible you will have to ride for tomorrow, though I hope I'll be able. But eat up and keep your strength up." This was good advice, and Jack realized it, so he sat down to the meal which Mrs. Watson had prepared as a finish to her housekeeping work earlier that day. Jack had scarcely finished when Dr. Brown came in and spent some time ministering to Mr. Bailey. The Pony Express rider felt much relieved after he had been given some quieting medicine, and as Dr. Brown was about to leave, Mr. Bailey asked, "Shall I be able to ride the route tomorrow?" The physician shook his head. "No, indeed," he exclaimed. "I'm sorry to have to tell you that you have a severe illness. I'm afraid you're going to have to be laid up for several weeks, if not longer. You have been neglecting yourself too long, and you've been worrying, haven't you?" "Well, yes, I have," admitted Mr. Bailey. "Oh, Dad, worrying," cried. "Is it about the old Harrington matter?" "Yes, it is, Jack. I can't get that off my mind." "Why, everyone knows that wasn't your fault," exclaimed Dr. Brown. "Of course," chimed in Mrs. Watson. "Well, I can't help thinking that the Harrington crowd believes I was to blame for it," went on the Pony Express rider. "But I never let that letter get away from me. It never left my bag from the time it was put in until I delivered it. But I can't prove that, and I can't help worrying over what people think of me." "You're foolish to let a thing like that annoy you," said Dr. Brown. Now that what has helped to make you ill. Now you must take a good rest. I'll be in to see you tomorrow." "But what about the trail, Doctor? Someone will have to carry the mail then." "You can't," exclaimed the physician. I need to get a glass of water. Okay. "Well, I will, Dad. I'll do it, of course," cried Jack. Who has a better right than I?" "Well, I'd like to see you do it, Jack, for I'd be sure the mail and express would be safe with you and Sunger," said the man. "But I don't know that the company will consent to it. You're not of the age." "I couldn't ride any better if I were 21 than I can now," interrupted Jack. "I'll go to see Mr. Perkfield the first thing in the morning. I'll meet the early stage and make the trip to Golden Crossing." Are they all well there?" he asked, trying to make his voice sound indifferent. "Pretty well," answered his father. "Aunt Matilda is ailing a bit, but Jenny is a big help. She handles all the mail alone now." "Well, Jack, I guess it's the only thing to do. You see Perkfield in the morning and explain things. The only thing I'm afraid is that he may make the Harrington matter an excuse to take the contract away from me. There are several who want to ride the trail in my place, but do the best you can." Amos Perkfield was the president as well as the general manager of several stage and pony express lines. He controlled the one between Golden Crossing and Rainbow Ridge, and it was he who had engaged Mr. Bailey. The Harrington matter had taken place some time before. Tyler Harrington was an influential mine owner, and an important letter had been sent to him by one of his agents. This letter was carried by Mr. Bailey, and in some manner the contents of it became known to interests opposed to Mr. Harrington and his associates. In this way they lost an important mining deal. While there were no open accusations, there had been hints on the part of the Harrington interest that the Pony Express rider might have been bribed to let someone open and read the letter on the journey over the mountains. Of course, Mr. Bailey had done nothing of the kind, and he had no idea how the contents of the letter became known. He felt distressed because he was suspected and worried greatly over the matter, but he could not disprove the unfounded suspicions against him. As he had admitted, he had been worrying more than usual lately over the affair, and this, with a general run-down condition and the hardships of his calling, had made him ill. Mrs. Watson offered to stay all night and help look after Mr. Bailey, and Jack was glad to have her do so. The sick man was a little better in the morning, but far from being able to ride the mail route. So Jack saddled Sunger, went in town to the early morning stage to ride every other day with the mail and express matter to be taken Golden Crossing and the points beyond. Pony Express is a connecting line between the two settlements. This is my page. To just relief, Mr. Perkfield made no objection to the young man taking his father's place. "I can't say how long it will last," went on the manager, "but we'll make it a temporary arrangement anyhow. You've ridden the route before, haven't you, you say?" "Yes, twice, when father was laid up with slight ailments." "Well, do the best you can. And another matter, there are some valuable letters, but never mind, I'll speak about them later." And Mr. Perkfield then turned away. Jack wondered what he was about to say. "If there was any valuable letter to carry," mused the young writer, "I hope none of them get lost, and that the contents become known. I hope that none become lost, or the contents of the letters become known. I'll have to be careful."
He was given the bags of and light express matter from the stage as soon as it rumbled in, and Jack set off over the mountains trail to Golden Crossing. The trip would take 4 hours, and if mail matter was ready, he would be back with it, making a round trip in about 8 or 9 hours. Sometimes delays at one end or the other, or accidents happen at the stages once in a while. There also have been hiccups too, not since Mr. Bailey had taken charge. A route. The stage of the Golden Crossing was not timed. The express ride had to wait for it, sometimes all night. On such a case, Mr. Bailey had stayed with his relative, Mrs. Blake, and Jack reasoned he could do the same thing. He caught himself almost wishing that the stage might be this time, as it would give him a chance for a long visit to his cousin Jenny. But on his way past, Jack stopped to see how his father was, and also report that he had been commissioned, at least temporarily, to carry mail. Jack found his father in better condition. Mrs. Wynne said she thought it would be better if he could be down to house. Both Jack and Mr. Bailey to this, Dr. Brown mentioning the question. I can look after her better